Jesus and his disciples have chosen to cross the lake. They're out in the boat, and Jesus is asleep on the cushion in the stern when suddenly they're inundated with this weather. And the disciples are extremely worried. There are waves that are coming over the side of the boat. They're crashing in. The boat is filling up with water. And nothing happy is happening. The man who is supposed to have the answers is asleep. How useless can you be? When we need you, where are you? But there he is, resting comfortably in the back of the boat. They have to wake him up to get him to pay attention. Jesus, look! We're perishing. And he looks around, and the first thing he does is he stands and rebukes the water, right? He rebukes the water. There are only a few things that Jesus rebukes in the Bible. There's a fig tree that he kills for not bearing fruit out of its time. There are moneylenders in the temple. He's not very kind with them. He's pretty ferocious with the sea. He rebukes it, but he doesn't rebuke the disciples. He takes care of the situation by bringing a calm to the waters, and the disciples are amazed. How can this happen? Who is this person who can command wind and wave? But he doesn't turn around and tell the disciples how bad they are. He simply says, "Where is your faith?" This is a very interesting thing. This is a very interesting point on Jesus' part, because this is the teachable moment, right? We've all been there. The disaster has happened. You've dealt with it. Now you turn around and tell the person how to never have it happen again. Jesus is simply telling his disciples, though, that they ought to have known that everything was going to be okay. He's there. He's not waking up and being frightened. So Jesus, who's pretty much in charge, does not think this is an emergency. Why do they think it's an emergency? Jesus has been telling his disciples repeatedly, this is how it's going to work. Here is how faith works. Here's what the kingdom of God is. Here's how we feed 5,000 people with only the scraps of a luncheon. You would think that the disciples by this time had figured it out. Instead, they're like the Three Stooges following Jesus around. You know, Shemp is there. Who's going to be first in heaven when we get there, God? Am I your favorite? Shouldn't we build booths here now that we've had this big experience on top of a mountain? The disciples are fully human. Jesus is fully human too, fully God and fully human, which means that he has to work with this cognitive dissonance, the fact that he's presenting the keys to the kingdom to them, and the disciples simply see the keys to a padlocked room. The disciples have already been told how salvation works. Jesus has shown them how salvation works. Jesus has been doing it parable by parable. He's been working miracles. He's been casting out demons from people, and they've seen it. But what this story reveals is how far faith has to go before it's ingrained in you deeply enough that you can trust your faith. That when things go bad and the waves crash in, that you have something other than a bailer to work with in your boat. The other interesting thing that this reveals is how much Jesus loved these disciples. He didn't thrash them. He didn't kick them out of the boat. He didn't get angry with them. He simply reminded them, where is your faith? And then let them figure that question out to answer it for themselves. It's the best way for anybody to learn, right? You don't give somebody the answer. You help somebody arrive at the answer so that it becomes their answer and it's internalized to them so that they can use it themselves later without having to have somebody there to instruct them. Here is how you do this again. So Jesus doesn't give up on his woefully earth-centered disciples. He simply reminds them. It's important for us to remember at the time that we're talking about that there were only a few places that qualified as the wild for people of biblical times. And the wild was a scary place. There were mountaintops, there were deserts, and there was the sea. The reason these are important at this time is not because they're vacation spots. Today we go to the mountains, the said deserts, the sea for recreation. To people of that time, these were scary places, really scary places, because in the wild was where demons lived. In the wild was where evil lurked. In the wild was where you were thrown, where you were made to go when you had done something bad. In the wild was danger. And the wild for them was a little different than our wild. We think desert today, and we think of something like the Moab Desert or Death Valley. hundreds of miles of trackless waste. For people of this time, the desert was actually just the outskirts of town. Just after you finished leaving the village limits, that's where the wild began. That's where the scary place was. In the 270s, the hermit who would become St. Anthony left his Egyptian farm, where he was a relatively wealthy man, and went to the desert to live. He went probably 4 miles out of town and took up residence in a small building that had been abandoned. St. Anthony fought with demons, fought with temptations there. St. Anthony's life, which was written up in the early Middle Ages, was the basis for almost all of the monastic movements that followed in the High Middle Ages. Our big picture of monks in a monastery comes initially from Anthony, who was described with a Greek word that meant the lone one. It's monachos, translated into monk. It was applied to Anthony, and it became the foundation for the great monastic orders that we know today. Their idea was to isolate themselves from the comfortable part of civilization, go to either a created wild or the actual wild, and there contemplate God and learn big lessons of faith themselves. The sea was also the wild. The sea was uncontrollable. The sea did unexpected things. Sometimes you found fish in it, sometimes you didn't. Sometimes you drowned in it. But remember, in both of these boat passages where Mark is writing about Jesus, Jesus is on his way across the sea from a big miracle or going to a big miracle. He's either going to Gadara to heal the person who had been infested with evil spirits. Remember, he casts them out. The spirits say, "Put us in the pigs." Jesus allows them to go into the minds of the pigs. The pigs rush down the shore and drown in the sea. Demons going back to the wild. Or he's coming from the miracle of the loaves and fishes, right? We've finished feeding the crowds. Now we need to go off on our own, go from one place to another, and so we will take a boat to go to it. And we leave this miracle that's happened, and we cross the wild to get to the next adventure. So out in the wild, this is why when the disciples saw Jesus walking across the water, coming from an island where he had stopped to do some contemplating, they thought he might have been a ghost at first. Because in the wild, you see ghosts. They're powerful and uncontrollable. And the worst thing about them is, if you aren't careful, they get into you, and now you have to be exorcised. Now you are the victim of an evil spirit that has grabbed onto you. Who knows today what medical explanation there was for the evil spirits that are talked about in the Bible? It could have been epilepsy. It could have been a grand mal seizure event. It could have been anything. But in that day, all of these events were signs that a very bad spirit had taken possession of a person who otherwise was just an innocent victim. They exposed themselves to the wild, and look what happened to them.